Morning hadn't settled yet when the boy reached the corner. The sky was pale, unfinished. The street was quiet in that fragile way it only gets before the day decides who matters. He shifted his backpack higher, the straps tight against his hoodie, the weight inside pulling him forward. Math book, science folder, lunch wrapped in foil, normal things. He stopped where he always stopped. Cracked curb, faded sign, same weight. An engine slowed behind him, not the bus. He felt it before he turned, tires easing off asphalt, gravel snapping once under pressure. A door opened, closed, boots hit the ground. "Hey, you," the voice was calm, too calm. The boy turned slowly. A police cruiser sat at the curb, angled like it had chosen him. The officer was already watching, shoulders square, eyes sharp. One hand rested on his belt, too close. "What are you doing out here?" the officer asked. "I'm waiting for the school bus, sir." His voice came out small. The officer scanned him, hoodie, backpack, empty street. "You don't look like you live around here." The words landed heavy. The boy's stomach tightened. He'd heard sentences like that before, on the news, in warnings, in rules whispered at home. "My house is right there," he said, nodding down the block. "Take your hands off the bag," the officer said. Slow, the boy obeyed instantly. Hands up, palms open, fingers spread. He'd practiced this in his head before, like other kids practice spelling words. Hands visible, don't argue, don't move fast, breathe. "Why are you shaking?" the officer asked. "I'm not," the boy said, even as his hands trembled. Silence stretched tight. Wind rattled a stop sign. Somewhere a sprinkler clicked on. His heart pounded so loud it felt exposed. Then the sound. A sharp metallic click, the sound of a life changing in a heartbeat. The officer's gun slid free, black and solid, rising into view. "Don't move," the officer said. The boy froze. His knees felt hollow. His fingers shook no matter how hard he tried to steady them. He'd seen moments like this on the news, watched adults argue afterward about what went wrong, but he never imagined the dark barrel of a Glock pointed at him, seconds before the school bus arrived. Across the street a curtain shifted. Someone was watching, someone always was. The red light on the bodycam blinked on, recording. The rumble of the bus grew louder. Brakes hissed as it slowed. "I didn't do anything," the boy whispered. "I just want to go to school." The gun stayed raised. The bus rolled to a stop, and the camera kept rolling. The boy's name was Malik, and he had learned, very early, how to move through mornings without taking up too much space. That morning had started like most others, the alarm buzzing low on the nightstand, not loud enough to wake the neighbors through the thin apartment walls. Malik rolled over and shut it off before it rang a second time. His mother was already awake. She always was. The kitchen light spilled into the hallway, a narrow stripe he followed like a guide. She stood at the counter in her robe, hair pulled back, coffee untouched. She looked tired in the way that never really went away, only shifted from one day to the next. When she saw him, she smiled anyway. Not big, just enough. "Morning," she said. "Morning," Malik replied. "Cereal, milk, a banana cut in half because it was easier to eat that way on the bus, normal things." She asked him about the science quiz. He said he felt okay. She reminded him to turn it in, not leave it in his backpack again. He nodded. Then, like always, the rules came out. She never called them rules. She just said them the way other parents said, "Don't forget your jacket." "Hands visible," she said, not looking at him now. "If anyone stops you." "I know," Malik said. "Slow movements," she continued. "Yes, sir, no, sir. I know. And if a police officer talks to you," she said, finally meeting his eyes, "you listen. You don't argue, even if you're right." He nodded again. He always did. She kissed his forehead before he left, lingering half a second longer than usual. He didn't notice at the time. He wouldn't until later. Outside, the neighborhood wore its quiet like a badge. Clean lawns, parked cars washed every weekend, flags on porches that meant different things depending on who you asked. Malik had lived there for 2 years, long enough to know which sidewalks creaked and which dogs barked at strangers, long enough to know he still didn't belong. At school, teachers called it a good area. Kids called it nice. Malik called it careful. He learned which houses watched him too closely, which parents asked whose kid he was. He learned that hoodies made people tense, that backpacks looked suspicious if you stood still too long. He learned to keep moving. At the bus stop, he usually wasn't alone. Sometimes a girl from 3 houses down waited there too, earbuds in, eyes glued to her phone. Sometimes a boy with a skateboard showed up late, always late, sprinting as the bus pulled in. That morning it was just Malik. He didn't mind the quiet. Quiet meant no questions. He stood the way his mother taught him, not slouched, not pacing, hands on the straps, eyes forward. He rehearsed the day in his head. Science quiz. English presentation. Basketball tryouts after school if the coach remembered to unlock the gym. Normal things. That was when the cruiser rolled in. Later, people would ask Malik what he thought when he saw the officer. He wouldn't have a clean answer. He didn't think the officer was there for him at first. Police cars passed through the neighborhood all the time. Slow patrols, presence, that was the word adults used. But when the engine slowed too much, when the car stopped instead of passing, something in Malik's chest tightened on instinct. Like his body recognized danger before his mind caught up. He remembered his mother's voice, hands visible. When the officer stepped out, Malik's world narrowed. The street, the cruiser, the space between them, everything else faded. He noticed details he couldn't explain later. The officer's boots were scuffed at the toes. The radio on his shoulder crackled softly. The way his eyes never left Malik's face, even when he pretended to look around. The questions came fast, sharp. What are you doing here? Do you live here? Where are you going? Malik answered everyone. He told the truth. He always did, but truth didn't feel like the right currency. Not here, not now. When the officer said he didn't look like he lived there, Malik felt something sink inside him. It wasn't surprise. It was recognition. He had been waiting for that sentence his whole life, even if he hadn't known it. He thought of his room. The poster peeling off the wall, his shoes by the door, his mother's keys hanging on the hook she drilled herself. How could someone look at him and not see that? His hands shook when he lifted them. He hated that most of all. Not the fear, but the proof of it. He wanted to be still, calm. He wanted to look like the kids in movies who talked their way out of trouble, but his body didn't listen. When the gun came out, time warped. The world didn't explode like in the movies. It shrank, the air felt heavier. Sounds dulled, then sharpened again. He saw the barrel, dark, circular, final. He thought of the bus, how late it already was, how his teacher would mark him tardy again. How unfair that felt, even now. He thought of his mother. He didn't think about dying, not exactly. He thought about not wanting to cry. He thought about how embarrassed he would be if he cried. When the Bodycam light blinked on, Malik didn't know what it meant. He just knew something was watching now. Something that would remember even if he wanted to forget. The bus pulling up felt unreal, like a mistake. Like it had wandered into the wrong scene. When the doors stayed closed, Malik understood something else. Even safety had conditions. By the time the gun lowered, by the time the officer's voice lost its edge, Malik felt hollowed out. Like something essential had been scooped from his chest and left behind on the pavement. He got on the bus without looking at anyone. He took the same seat he always took, window side, third row back. He pressed his forehead to the glass as the bus pulled away. The neighborhood slid past. Lawns, flags, houses that looked exactly like safety. Malik stared until his reflection blurred. At school, they would ask why he was quiet. They always asked. He would shrug, say nothing, and the rules his mother taught him would settle deeper into his bones, heavier now, no longer hypothetical, not advice, not caution, survival. The officer didn't tell Malik to lower his hands right away. That was the first thing that stretched the moment into something unreal. Malik stood there with his arms raised, shoulders burning, fingers tingling, palms open like evidence he didn't know how else to provide. The gun stayed trained on his chest, steady and deliberate. The officer's face had emptied of expression, not calm, not angry, just focused in a way that left no room for humanity. "Turn around," the officer said. Malik hesitated for half a second, long enough to be scared of hesitating. "Sir, turn around," slowly. Malik rotated his body inch by inch, terrified the wrong angle might look like defiance. His backpack shifted, the zipper rattling softly. The sound was small, but it cracked the air. "Don't touch it," the officer snapped. "I'm not," Malik said quickly. "I swear." Hands higher. Malik lifted them more. His shoulders screamed. His breathing turned shallow, sharp pulls he couldn't control. "Why are you here?" the officer asked again, like Malik hadn't already answered. "I live here," Malik said. "I'm waiting for the bus." "You don't look like a student," the officer said. "School doesn't start for another 20 minutes. Malik blinked, confused. "Sometimes it comes early," he said. "Sometimes it's late." The officer didn't respond. He spoke into his radio instead, voice lowered but not enough. Malik caught fragments. Possible trespasser, juvenile suspicious behavior, suspicious for standing still, suspicious for existing in the wrong body on the wrong street. "Do you have anything on you?" the officer asked. "No, sir, no weapons. No, sir. No drugs. No, sir." Each question stacked on the last, each one pressing Malik's smaller, thinner, more wrong. He answered every time. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He followed the rules his mother drilled into him like muscle memory. "Reach back and unzip your backpack," the officer said. Malik's heart jumped violently. "Sir," he said carefully, "you told me not to move." The officer's jaw tightened. "The gun didn't lower. I'm telling you now, do it slowly." Malik swallowed hard. He moved one hand back in a wide, exaggerated arc, desperate to show compliance. Every nerve screamed not to mess this up. His fingers brushed the zipper. The officer shouted, "Stop, hands up." Malik froze mid-motion, hands suspended inches from the bag, his breath locked painfully in his chest. He started. "Hands up." He snapped his arm back so fast his shoulder jolted. The backpack swung, then settled. The officer exhaled sharply. "You trying to test me?" "No, sir," Malik said. "I was doing what you said." Silence collapsed between them, heavier now. Malik's arms shook openly. He tried to lock his elbows, but it only made the tremor worse. The bus was close. He could hear it clearly now. The rumble, the familiar whine of brakes somewhere down the road. Relief flared and died instantly. What if the driver saw the gun? What if the doors didn't open? A car slowed at the intersection. A woman stared openly from behind the wheel, mouth slightly open. Malik saw her lips move, though he couldn't hear the words. "Who do you live with?" the officer asked. "My mom. Where's your father?" Malik flinched. "I don't know," he said quietly. The officer nodded once, like that explained something. "Step back toward the cruiser." Malik took one step. Gravel shifted under his shoe. The sound made his stomach drop. "Slower," the officer warned. "I am," Malik said, voice cracking. He felt the cruiser before he touched it. Cold metal brushed his knuckles. "Lean forward," the officer said. "Hands on the hood." Malik complied. The hood was cold through his hoodie, unforgiving against his ribs. He spread his fingers wide, exactly like he'd seen on TV. The gun lowered slightly, but Malik didn't relax. He felt the officer's presence behind him, heavy and absolute. "You ever been in trouble before?" the officer asked. "No, sir." "You ever run from police?" "No, sir." "You lying to me?" "No, sir." Each answer felt like stepping onto thin ice. The officer patted him down briskly, roughly. Hands at Malik's sides, his back, the pockets of his jeans. Malik stared straight ahead, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. He focused on breathing without shaking. The officer stopped. His hand pressed into the side pocket of the backpack. "What's this?" he asked. "My lunch," Malik said. "My mom packed it." The officer unzipped the bag and pulled the foil-wrapped bundle into view. He stared at it longer than necessary, eyes searching, suspicious, as if expecting danger to reveal itself. The officer stared at the foil, looking for a weapon, but all he found was a mother's love wrapped in aluminum. Behind them, the bus pulled up fully now. The doors stayed closed. The engine idled, loud and tense. Malik heard a nervous laugh from inside. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" The officer shoved the lunch back into the bag and zipped it shut. He stepped back, glancing at the bus, then at Malik. "Why didn't you explain yourself better?" the officer said. "You made this harder than it had to be." Malik's head spun. "I did," he said softly. "I told you." The officer shook his head. "You kids always say that." The gun finally dropped toward the ground, but Malik didn't feel safe. His arms lowered slowly, blood rushing back painfully. "Get on the bus," the officer said. "And next time, don't loiter where you don't belong." "I wasn't loitering," Malik said before he could stop himself. The officer's head snapped up. "What did you say?" Fear surged back instantly. Malik saw the gun in his mind, remembered how fast it had appeared. "Nothing, sir," he said. "I'm sorry." The officer stared at him for another long second. Then he turned away, already speaking into his radio, voice casual now, like the moment had already erased itself. Malik walked to the bus on legs that didn't feel like his own. The doors hissed open. He climbed the steps without looking at the driver. "You okay?" the driver asked quietly. Malik nodded. It was easier than explaining. Every head turned as he moved down the aisle. Some kids stared. Some looked away too fast. Malik slid into his seat, window side, third row back, and pressed his forehead to the glass. Outside, the officer got back into his cruiser. He didn't look back. The bus pulled away. Only then did Malik realize how close he was to breaking. His hands curled into fists in his lap, nails digging into his palms. He didn't cry. He refused to. But his chest ached with something he didn't yet have words for. The Bodycam kept recording long after the cruiser disappeared, long after the corner went quiet again, long after Malik understood this hadn't been a misunderstanding. It was a warning. The bus didn't pull away fast enough. Malik could still see the officer in the side mirror, shrinking slowly as the bus rolled forward, but not disappearing. The cruiser stayed parked like it owned the street, like it always had. The image burned itself into Malik's mind. He pressed his forehead harder against the cold glass, breathing shallow, counting cracks in the sidewalk as they slid past. No one spoke to him at first. The bus was loud in all the wrong ways. Seats squeaked, someone's music leaked through earbuds. A boy too rose up, whispered something and snickered, then went silent when the driver glanced in the mirror. Malik felt every sound in his body, like his nerves were stretched thin. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He tucked them between his knees, hoping no one would notice. He told himself it was over. He was on the bus. He was safe, but his chest didn't believe him. His heart still raced like it was trying to outrun something invisible. At school, the day didn't slow down to match him. Lockers slammed, shoes squeaked. The bell rang like a hammer in his skull. Malik moved through it all as if underwater, faces blurred, voices muffled. Teachers asked questions he didn't hear. He gave small nods, the kind that avoided more attention. In science class, the quiz waited on his desk, untouched. Words refused to settle into meaning. He stared at the page until letters blurred. When the teacher called time, Malik handed it in half-finished, cheeks burning with shame that had nothing to do with grades. At lunch, he didn't eat. The foil-wrapped sandwich sat on his tray, untouched. Every time he looked at it, he saw the officer's hand pressing into his backpack, the suspicion in his eyes. Malik pushed the tray away. He whispered, "I'm not hungry," though his stomach ached. By the end of the day, the story was moving without him. A kid from the bus told another kid. Phones came out. Blurry pictures circulated, police car, shapes, movement. By seventh period, someone whispered, "That's him," as he walked past. Malik kept his head down. At home, his mother knew something was wrong before he spoke. She always did. Malik dropped his backpack and stood, unsure how to begin. His chest felt tight again like that morning. "Malik," she said softly, "what happened?" The words came out broken, fragments tumbling together. He told her about the cruiser, the questions, the gun. His voice shook when he reached the part that mattered most. He tried to make it smaller, less heavy, but it didn't work. She slammed her hand on the table, not crying, not silent. Righteous anger pulsed in her, sharp and dangerous. Her phone hovered over the screen, poised to dial. She muttered words he couldn't hear fully at first. "Gun school bus stop." Then she slammed it down. "I'm not letting this go," she said, voice trembling but fierce. Malik realized she wasn't broken. She was fired up, and that fire scared him in a way relief never could. The police report arrived the next day. Words appeared on the screen like a mockery. Suspicious juvenile, erratic behavior. Officer feared for safety, protocol followed. Visuals of the report flashed over the screen in his mind as if the system itself had stamped him guilty, despite the truth everyone saw in the Bodycam. The weight of it made his chest ache. At school, adults tried to soothe him with careful words. The officer was doing his job. "We're all learning how to handle these situations. Take a breath, Malik," but their words were passive. Comfort without accountability. The message was clear. The system was right. He was wrong. Malik's refuge, the bus stop, was no longer safe. He stood farther back from the curb each morning, scanning the street for threats in every passing car. Every slow engine made his heart spike. Every stranger's glance made him flinch. Other parents noticed. Some offered tight smiles. Some avoided eye contact. One mother pulled her child closer when Malik approached. He saw it. He felt it. The lesson had been reinforced. In their eyes, he was still out of place. At night, Malik's mother walked him to the corner, hands on her hips, eyes sharp, scanning every car and shadow. Malik hated needing it. He hated that she felt she had to. A local news van parked down the block. Malik pressed his face to the window as a reporter adjusted a microphone, camera lifted, ready to capture something that had already been lived. His stomach dropped. The story had outgrown him. Even with the gun lowered that morning, the fear had embedded itself. It wasn't just the officer. It was the system, the whispers, the judgment, the casual disbelief that carried the weight of authority. The Bodycam kept recording long after the cruiser disappeared, long after the street went quiet again, long after Malik understood that what had happened wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a message, and the world was already repeating it. Malik sat at the kitchen table, the tablet in front of him trembling slightly under his hands. His mother had put it there, her fingers lingering on the screen as if she were weighing the power of what it contained, the Bodycam footage. Every second of that morning, every command, every suspicion, every accusation captured. He pressed play. The officer appeared immediately, gun drawn, tone clipped and sharp. Malik saw himself on the screen, hands up, trembling, trying to obey every order. And then, as if the universe had decided to expose the truth in one cruelly perfect line, the officer muttered under his breath, barely audible, "Another one of these kids thinking they own the sidewalk." Malik froze. His chest tightened. That was it. That one phrase captured everything. The assumption, the prejudice, the entire system condensed into a whispered sentence. His mother's hand gripped his shoulder. Her knuckles were white, trembling with rage. "This isn't just wrong," she whispered, voice tight. "It's unacceptable. They think they can scare him, silence him, and nobody will know." Malik felt the anger ripple from her into him. Fear was still there, a heavy weight in his chest, but now it was tangled with something else, power. The realization that the truth, undeniable and raw, could not be hidden. They watched the footage again. The officer's gun, the questions, Malik's compliance. Every hesitated movement, every whispered "yes, sir," every raised eyebrow of suspicion, it was all there. The foil-wrapped lunch, his mother's voice echoing in his mind, slow, hands visible, obey. The sound of his backpack zipper rattling, mistaken for threat, and then, at the end, the whispered line played again. This time, Malik didn't flinch. He leaned closer. He could almost hear it. The systemic disbelief, the casual racism that underpinned the morning. His mother turned to him, eyes bright, fury and determination coiled tightly in her. "We're not waiting for them to act," she said. "They'll try to bury it. The department, the school, they'll call it internal review. Hush it up, protect the officer. But people will see it if we show them." Malik's fingers hovered over the share button. The temptation, the weight of decision, made him pause. But the truth burned brighter than his fear. They uploaded the footage. Social media caught fire within hours. People shared it, reposted it, tagged local news outlets. The whispered line, the officer's voice dripping with casual prejudice, became the focal point. Another one of these kids thinking they own the sidewalk. Clips, reactions, outrage. Everyone saw the injustice. Everyone felt the tension Malik had lived through. The police department scrambled. Statements, press releases, assurances of review, but the clip had already escaped their control. The system that wanted to silence, to dismiss, was now exposed. Malik's mother watched the reactions scroll across the screen, her jaw tight, anger simmering, but also a fierce satisfaction. "They tried to make him small," she said. "They tried to hide it, but the world just watched, and now they have to answer." Malik, sitting next to her, felt a strange mix of relief and empowerment. The fear of that morning hadn't vanished, but it had transformed. The gun, the commands, the suspicion, all of it had led to a reckoning. The truth couldn't be ignored anymore. For the first time, he understood why his mother had always told him to follow the rules, to stay visible, to keep his hands where they could be seen. Not just to survive, but so that if the system ever turned on him, there would be evidence, there would be witnesses, there would be accountability. By nightfall, the hashtag was trending. Local reporters called. The school principal's office released a statement, carefully worded, defensive. The department announced an internal review. Malik and his mother watched it all unfold, quiet, tense, yet unstoppable. And Malik knew something else too. The world was watching. Every whisper of casual prejudice, every moment of silent assumption could no longer hide. The Bodycam had changed everything. In seconds, the fear that had gripped him that morning transformed into a weapon of truth, wielded not by power or authority, but by a small, trembling hand that had survived it all. The next morning, Malik approached the bus stop with a new wariness, not the paralyzing fear of before, but a calculated alertness. Every shadow, every passing car, every casual glance from a stranger registered in his mind. He carried his backpack differently now, centered on his back, hands visible, shoulders squared. The gun incident was no longer just a memory, it was a warning, and he had learned from it. The bus pulled up, hissing its brakes, and Malik stepped forward. He noticed the other kids whispering, glancing at him. Some looked nervous, some looked impressed. The tension in the air was no longer just his own. The world had caught up. The officer's name had already spread on social media. The clip of the Bodycam, with its unmistakable line, had gone viral. People demanded accountability. Calls were made. Local news covered it. Parents wrote letters. Malik had become the focus of a storm he hadn't asked for, but one that carried the possibility of real change. When the police department finally contacted his mother for a formal meeting, she went in with fire in her eyes. She refused to let them frame Malik as the problem, refusing to accept vague apologies or internal reviews. The department was forced to acknowledge the officer's misconduct publicly. Statements were issued. Retraining was mandated. Policies regarding stops near school zones were reviewed. Small victories, yes, but significant, tangible proof that action could follow exposure. At school, Malik noticed the shift immediately. Teachers were more attentive, staff more aware. Conversations that once ignored systemic bias now included acknowledgement that the morning incident had been wrong. Kids who whispered behind his back now walked past with cautious respect, some even offering a quiet nod. One afternoon, Malik's mother handed him a fresh foil-wrapped lunch. "Your mother's survival kit," she teased lightly, though her eyes were serious. "Keep your hands visible, your voice steady, and never let anyone make you feel small." Ever, Malik smiled faintly, a mix of relief and understanding. He had survived fear, but he had also witnessed truth prevailing in a way he hadn't imagined possible. As weeks passed, Malik returned to the bus stop each morning, watching, alert but not frozen. Cars slowed, drivers glanced, some hesitated, but Malik was no longer invisible, no longer merely a shadow under suspicion. He had a presence now, backed by truth, amplified by the courage of his mother and the eyes of thousands who had seen the footage. The world hadn't become fair overnight. Racism, suspicion, and prejudice still lingered in corners of streets, schools, and offices. But Malik had learned something invaluable. Exposure could disarm fear, visibility could demand accountability, and courage, quiet, steadfast courage, could ripple far beyond a single morning. That afternoon, the bus pulled up, and Malik stepped onto the steps with calm certainty. He caught the eye of the driver, who gave a small, approving nod. He found his seat, placed his hands on his lap, and stared out the window, tracing the familiar street. The officer's cruiser was nowhere in sight, but the memory remained, a warning and a lesson. Malik exhaled slowly. The barrel of a gun had once defined his morning. Now, the truth of what had been captured, seen, and shared defined his path. In that subtle, unspoken way, justice had been nudged forward. The system couldn't erase what had been witnessed. And Malik knew that, moving forward, he carried more than fear. He carried evidence, awareness, and a voice that could not be silenced. The street was quiet now, the hum of distant traffic the only sound. Malik stood at the corner where the bus always stopped, backpack slung over his shoulder, hands relaxed but visible. The morning sun glinted off the pavement, illuminating cracks and shadows he had once scanned with fear. He remembered the barrel of the gun, the officer's clipped voice, the whispered line that had made his blood run cold. Another one of these kids thinking they on the sidewalk. It still echoed in his mind, but now it carried a different weight. It was no longer just a mark of danger. It was a reminder of truth, of courage, and of accountability. His mother stood beside him, silent but steady, eyes scanning the street with the same vigilance she always had. She didn't smile. She didn't nod approvingly. Instead, there was quiet satisfaction, tempered with the knowledge that the fight wasn't over, but that today they had won a small victory. Malik watched the bus approach, tires crunching over asphalt, doors sighing open. He climbed aboard with calm certainty, finding his usual seat by the window. Outside, the world carried on, unaware of the small battle that had just been fought, but Malik knew it mattered. The Bodycam had captured fear, the world had seen it, and in that exposure, injustice had been confronted. Sometimes courage isn't loud, sometimes it's simply standing there, hands raised, letting the truth speak. And in that quiet, the world begins to change.